And there he is, Mr. Michael Sigru. Mike, how are you doing, my friend?
Doing great. How about you?
I'm doing good, man. I've been excited about this one since I seen that the clip which we'll talk about I think I don't know, I forget the name of the show that you were like on. It was about like a 14-minute segment where you were talking
Absolutely. Yeah,
about
vibe with humanity.
yeah, when I saw that, I was like we're gonna. we'll get to that story, but I mean, like with the twin, everything about, I was just like, wow. And I just got done interviewing though another ex cop at the time, Kevin Donaldson, who had his own like PTSD issues, and that he talks about all the time. So, then I saw though you sent though that over. And I took one look at that, and I was like, I have to talk to this guy, and that's why I reached out. And I can't thank you enough for being here. So, thanks again, man, for giving me the time.
Oh, absolutely. It's my honor to be here.
All right, Mike. Who was Mike Sigru back? Let's just take it. First off, where you born and raised? Where are you from?
So I was born in Oakland, California. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area. I pretty much stayed in the Bay Area until I went to college, and I went to college out in Sacramento. And at that point, I entered the military, lived all over the world, was in Europe, all over the United States, Middle East, South America, came back in 2004. So now I'm back in the San Francisco Bay Area. I ended up getting a job here in law enforcement, retired, and I'm still here. So,
Wow, man. And how are you able to hit up all those spots? Was that from the Air Force? Like all those, I mean, you've been to a lot of places.
well, yeah, no, when I was in the Air Force, I was stationed a bunch of different places, but I was deployed, I was TDY. Even when I lived in Germany, a lot of that was I was able to go to 32 different countries because I mean everything's like right there. So, part of it was work, part of it was pleasure. It was a mix. But the Middle East and South America, that was all work.
Gotcha. And did you enjoy it though? Did you like going to all those different places?
Oh yeah, I mean there's nothing like it. I wouldn't trade my time in the military for anything. And it's kind of crazy because I've met people today that have never literally been outside of the state of California or been outside of their local area. And as you know, I mean, seeing the world, seeing how different people live, the different cultures, the sights, the sounds, the food, I mean, just everything. It gives you appreciation for not only where you live, but how good we have it here in the United States. So my only regret is not traveling more. And now that I'm retired, that's my plan, is to travel as much as I can.
Yeah, that's what I'm working on doing, is just getting enough saving up enough so I could just travel, because I think we're meant to travel as humans. Even to go back way back in the day, like even like when I read about Vikings and stuff, they built ships to travel. Like I think it's in our blood, but like society almost has this at this point, like you go to high school in your city, you find the right girl, then you just stay in that area until you're married. And like you just said, I know a lot of people who aren't who never even left this little city of Wilkes-Barre that holds 50,000 people. So I have it in my blood. Like I just want to get out there and travel and see the world. And like I love different cultures.
Oh, I agree. And I mean, it's just like I said, I'm always down to try new things, learn new things. And, people are the same everywhere. We all have the same desires, we have the same needs. But I think we get complacent. I think a lot of times we take things for granted, especially here in the United States. And all you need is a couple trips to Africa or South America or, like a third world country to see how some of these other people live and have to fight to survive every single day. And then you truly realize how blessed we are. I know we all got issues, we all got problems, life is stressful, bills are racking up, things cost money, but still, I mean, you can't beat the way we have it here. I mean, life is good.
It really is, though, and it puts things into perspective. Like when you really think you're having a bad day, and then you could just think back about how certain people are living out there. Our bad day is probably a day that they would dream for. You know.
Exactly. No, absolutely. And I think, I'm biased here, but I think everybody should serve like 1 or 2 years in the military, give them a chance to travel, see the world, mature a bit, and get their education paid for, and then, go into whatever career or whatever thing they want to pursue, whatever their desire is. I mean, the world is your oyster at that point. So I'm a strong advocate for getting people out there, getting them educated, getting them exposed to different people and different cultures.
No, absolutely. Now, did just this whole military thing and like, I know that then you became a police officer and all that. Was this something you always wanted to do as a kid? Like what sprung it on?
Yeah, so there's actually two factors. The first is my grandfather was in the Army Air Corps, and I always looked up to him. I was very close with him. We'd always go fishing, and I always remember like going to his house and seeing his medals and seeing his uniforms and things from the military. And I literally would dress up as a soldier or a police officer every year for Halloween. And my biggest inspiration, though, came into my life early on. About 8 years old, my parents got divorced. And a short time later, my stepfather came into my life, and he was my hero. I mean, literally in every way, in every respect. He was a phenomenal father, a great husband to my mother, but he was in law enforcement. He eventually retired as a lieutenant for the Richmond Police Department, Richmond is one of the most dangerous cities in the San Francisco Bay Area. But at a young age, I actually became a volunteer for his department. And then in high school, I became a police explorer. And I knew at that point that this is my career, this is my path. Some things changed, but my initial plan was to get a scholarship to college, which I did. I got a full scholarship through the Air Force Reserve Officer Training Program. Went to Sac State University. I majored in criminal justice, but I owed 4 years. That was the thing. So by getting the scholarship, I was going to serve my country for 4 years, do that, get out, and I was going to go into federal law enforcement. But when I got in, I mean, I loved it. And they sent me to Germany. So I was actually living in Germany when 9/11 happened. A short time after that, because of 9/11, I was in the Middle East. And I ended up extending my time in the military, ended up staying about 6.5 years active duty. I actually got stationed back here in California at Travis Air Force Base, where I was the chief of security forces. I was actually a captain at that point. And that's when I started to transition out. And I went straight into civilian law enforcement for the Walnut Creek Police Department here in the San Francisco Bay Area. But I've known, like I said, since a child that this was my true calling. This wasn't something that I just woke up one day. I was like, you know what, let me give this a try. Like, this seems like a cool job. I was one of those guys from day one that had everything planned out. I mean, everything, every step. I knew what I had to do, even both in the military and law enforcement. I had my career, just pathed out. I knew every step that I wanted to take.
Now, was it just for the career wise, or like, did you feel like in your gut, like, like you really wanted to make a difference?
No, I felt it was a calling. I absolutely felt like I wanted to make a difference. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, because I like that excitement. I like that adrenaline. And I like the fact that there's danger, and that, especially as a police officer, it's unknown every single day. Like, you never know what you're walking into or what you're going to, or the person that you're contacting, who they are, what they just did, or what their background is. And so I truly love that adrenaline, that excitement, that danger. But the other part of it is, I want to make a difference. I want to help people. And I think you're a little naive when you first start out in both the military and law enforcement, and you think you're going to change the world. In reality, you're going to change people's lives, and it's literally going to be maybe one person at a time. You're not going to change the world, but you truly can make a difference. And sometimes that can be a negative difference, depending how your interaction goes with people, or it can be very positive. And honestly, I had both of those. I know that I negatively affected a lot of people's lives, but I also know that I positively affected a lot of people's lives. And it's a true mix.
When you say negatively, though, could you give me an example?
Yeah. I mean, and I'll put it this way too. When I first started out in law enforcement, I was a very black and white person. What I mean by that, I don't mean anything with ethnicity or race or color. What I mean by that is I used to believe that if you broke the law, I didn't care. I didn't care what your circumstances were. I didn't care what your background was, but you're either getting a ticket, your car was getting towed, you're going to jail. I'm doing a search warrant on your house. Whatever the case was, I was after the criminals. I wanted to arrest as many bad guys and girls as I could and put them away in jail or prison. That was my goal. And early on, I had my sights set on an undercover career in law enforcement. And so I really tried to focus my proactivity to getting drugs and guns off the street. And so when I say I negatively affected a lot of people's lives, putting not, I mean, a ticket can actually adversely affect someone's life in a very bad way. You know, if someone
Yeah.
is going through a financial hardship and they can't afford the ticket, or you're towing their car and impounding it, and now they have no transportation to get to work or take their kids to school. You know, if you're locking somebody up and putting them in jail or prison, I mean, it negatively affects everything in their life. It affects their relationships, their finances. You know, so although it comes with the territory, you know, I didn't think about that back then. I think about it now. I think about things totally different, and we're going to get into that. And a lot of that comes with age and maturity. But for me, it comes with being involved in a lot of very traumatic incidents. You know, most incidents where people would run away, and incidents that we have to run towards because we're the last resort. You know, when someone calls 911 on the worst day of their lives and they need help, we're it. We're the only help out there, and we need to run towards them and help those people as fast as we can. And so, you know, I would like to think that a lot of the people I arrested, you know, and I know quite a few actually that reached back out to me years later and thanked me, because they said, had I not arrested them or had I not put them in jail, that they probably wouldn't be alive today, that they probably would have continued on their path and would have overdosed or would have killed somebody or been killed or been locked up for life in prison with no chance of parole or ever getting out. So, you know, it comes with a heavy conscience, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I always did the right thing as far as the law. You know, I believe in integrity, I believe in honesty, and I believe in upholding the standards. But back then, I didn't really look at the why. And my understanding now, going through what I've been through, I look at alcoholism and I look at addiction a lot differently. I don't look down upon those people. I don't judge those people. I now know that all those people, if not all of them, they have trauma in their life. They have things they've been through, whether it's as a young child and later in life, that led them down this path. You know, this path of drugs and self-destruction. And I know that because I went down my own path of self-destruction after my trauma and after my things I've been through. And so in the work I do now, I work with a lot of first responders and military members who are dealing with post-traumatic stress injury. And how do a lot of them cope with that? Well, alcohol, drug addiction, gambling addictions, porn addictions, extramarital affairs, you know, chasing that excitement off the job. And it's all these negative coping mechanisms. And it's a abnormal way, you know, to deal with all this abnormal things that we've been exposed to and had to deal with. So again, I really wish I had this mentality and this view of life when I was a young police officer. And I think I'd actually be a better police officer today if I was still working, ironically.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, at the same time, though, you still had to do what you had to do. And I remember, though, when I got arrested, it was about 4 years ago. At that moment, I hated the cop. I hated him, but I never picked up again after. Like, he saved my life. You know what I mean? We have a great relationship today. Like, we
Exactly.
talk all the time, and like we're like, he loves the show. He's on. We both like MMA, and like, you know, we'll get together. We actually, you know, he come to my house and watch UFC. Like, we're friends. And
Exactly.
and he's still a cop. And but he, you know, you don't realize it right when it's going on, but like after, you know, when as time goes on, I'm like, he saved me. Like, he absolutely does save me, and he was doing his job. And I just, you know, you know, a lot of people right in the heat of the moment, they're going to be all in your face. But as time goes on, as I look back, I mean, I can't thank him enough for finding me where he found me. And you know, so I'm sure, though, you know, you, like you said, you heard that from other people as well, that, you know, but like you said, it's got to be tough when, you know, someone just doesn't pay like their ticket, then a warrant ends up going out and all that type of stuff, get arrested, or like, you know, they're every little tiny little thing could affect their life. But at the end of the day, I mean, you are a police officer, you do have to abide by the law. And, you know, if you were a cop these days, what are you saying? Like, you think you'd be more lenient? Or are you saying that you wouldn't be as black and white?
I would say yes to both, but you know, there's times where you can be lenient and there's times where you can't. And I think the public may not understand that, but there's certain crimes, and especially if there's a victim, You don't have a choice as a police officer. You have to arrest somebody. And I'll give you an example, like domestic violence. We all know how serious domestic violence is.
Yeah.
Child abuse, these just heinous crimes. Those are not gray areas. Those truly are black and white areas. Now the gray area is, if I stop somebody who's speeding and they're honest about it, they're apologetic, they don't have a history of doing this, and they gave a reason for whatever, and I can give them a break. That's an example where I can show my discretion, or like people don't understand that driving under the influence of drugs or alcohol, back in the old days, you may have been able to give somebody a break for that, but nowadays you can't, because the fact is, and I'll tell you this, I honestly know an officer that did this, so I'm not going to name their name. It's very tragic, but an officer had stopped somebody, we'll just say in an unknown city at an unknown time. And this person, they couldn't figure it out. They weren't under the influence of alcohol, but they ended up letting them go. And literally 2 blocks later, this person ran over a parent and their child and killed them. And it turns out this person was under the influence of drugs. Now, again, I wasn't there. I can't speak for this officer. Alcohol and drugs are different as far as how do you detect that? What are the tests? But there is such a liability involved that if you were to let anybody go and anything happens, you're done. The department's done. The city's done. Everyone's done. But more importantly, lives are lost, whether it's that person you let go or somebody they ran into or ran over. And again, I don't think people realize that. But when it comes to drugs and alcohol, there is so much at stake there, and there's so many lives at stake there. And, what's interesting I see too, is with the legalization of marijuana and all these other things, marijuana is just like alcohol. You cannot drive under the influence of marijuana, yet countless people are doing it. I mean, I can't tell you how many times as a civilian now I'm driving behind people, and not only can I see the smoke coming from the car, but I can smell it. And, people don't understand that, but you truly can smell it when you're driving behind somebody in their car. And again, these people are driving impaired. They're driving under the influence, distracted on top of that. And again, lives are being lost. So again, there is definitely black and white areas, but there's also gray areas. Again, everyone's different. Every contact's different. And so I think though, where it comes into play is that I would take more time to maybe get to know these people in the limited time I have and kind of find out, why is this happening, and maybe figure out potential resources that I can point them towards or that I can offer to them in the future to help them get out of this rut. Because there are lots of resources for addiction, alcoholism, PTSD, all these things that a lot of people don't know about or they're not aware of.
And then you just got to think about the officer, though, who let him go. And then besides, though, if he loses his job or whatever, that's an internal prison that he's got to think about them running over, though. Like he could have stopped that. That's got to be a mind effort, if you know what I'm saying, though, alone. Like,
you'll live with that the rest of your life. You're never going to forget about that. I've taken a life, not in that regard, but in officer-involved shooting, it was justified. But in that scenario, even though I did the right thing under the, most difficult circumstances, that will always affect me for the rest of my life. So I couldn't imagine a situation where, you make a mistake or maybe you don't do what you should do, and then something like this happens. I just can't imagine the toll of that. I think they've come up with now, like, what is the true cutoff level to consider somebody under the influence at the time? No different than when you test somebody's blood for alcohol, because again, you can do the same thing with a blood test for alcohol, and it tells you the percentage at that time. And I'll tell you too that, when I first started in law enforcement, marijuana was illegal in all regards.
Yeah.
And now it's fully legal, and I'm not against it. I actually think it helps a lot of people. I think it helps a lot of veterans, retired first responders with post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injury, physical injuries. And so my only thing is that I'm against is people driving under the influence of it, or misusing it, or, underage or kids, that type of thing. But like you said, and I would agree with you on your statement, I think alcohol is worse than marijuana, and I've seen the effects of that. And ironically enough, and people joke about this, but usually if you're going to like a domestic violence call, or you're going to like a disturbance in progress or a fight, 9 out of 10 times, not always, but 9 out of 10 times, alcohol is involved in those scenarios. And it's just those two different things affect people in different ways. But I will also throw one other caveat out there. In my situation, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but in the shooting that I was in, there was a theory that it might have happened because of drug-induced psychosis. And I never heard of this before, but it's a fact that marijuana for some people and other drugs can cause a drug-induced psychosis.
Oh yeah, without a doubt, 100%. Yeah, yeah. If there's one thing I'm almost expert at, it's with drugs. I went through a psychosis. I went through psychosis myself with that, and yeah, it absolutely, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head though there. You do though keep going. Do you like you were talking though about though the shooting and stuff like that? What year did you become a police officer?
So I got out of the Air Force. I went in the Air Force in 1998. I got out in 2004 as a captain. I went to the police academy in July of 2004. And in December of 2004, I pinned on my badge. I became official police officer. And I worked in law enforcement up until 2018. And when I was in law enforcement, I started out as a patrol officer, was then a field training officer. That's where you train people that just graduated the police academy, but you also train officers that are switching departments, whether switching cities or from a state or a county, but you're training them on how you do it in your city and procedures and report writing and all these things. Eventually I was detective. I was undercover on a California state drug task force. So that was basically like the DEA of the state of California. And I loved it. It was the best time of my entire career. And after that, I got promoted to sergeant, and I was then running patrol teams on the streets. And that's actually when my shooting happened, was when I was a brand new patrol sergeant. I had just been promoted in November of 2012, and I was on my second solo shift as a sergeant, December 2012, when the shooting happened.
Now, before though we get into the shooting, though, I want to talk a little bit about the undercover work. Were you ever put in any dicey situation? I mean, undercover work is scary. I mean, depending on who you're, what type of people you're dealing with, if you get found out, like, did you ever have any, scary, dicey situations, or were you, what gave you the confidence though to be able to do that? Because I mean, obviously you got to have street smarts to do that.
Honestly, I felt invincible. I think a lot of first responders, especially police officers, they feel invincible until something happens. And even my entire career in the military, so those 6.5 years, even being deployed, I always felt invincible. I felt untouchable. Like I felt like when I put that badge and uniform and vest on, that I was untouchable. And when I went undercover, obviously I didn't have the badge and uniform on per se, at least when we were doing undercover operations. But I also was with a very close-knit team of senior detectives, agents from other departments from all over the county who were badasses. And we actually were very highly trained. And the most dangerous part of the job for me, I think, was when we were doing search warrants or parole searches or probation searches. And this is literally where we had like our raid vests on. I still had my long goatee and my earrings and my head's all shaved, and some guys' hair's all, we look nothing like cops, but we have these tactical vests on that say police. We've got our assault weapons, and we're literally blowing people's doors open in the morning when they're sleeping with search warrants, guns out. We're in their castle where they have guns and dope and who knows in there. And we're literally clearing, going from room to room to room, hoping we don't get shot or killed. And we would do that, I mean, multiple times a week, sometimes 2 or 3 times in a day. And I'm talking about drug dealers in some of the most dangerous cities in the San Francisco Bay Area. And again, I just felt untouchable. I felt invincible. And yeah, there was, looking back, plenty of situations that were scary. That, I mean, I would say most everything we did was extremely high risk. I mean, when you think about it, just think about your house and think about if you were sleeping in the middle of the night And most people have guns. I mean, most citizens in America have multiple guns. I mean, I have a crap load of guns. We'll have them in places where they can get to them easily if somebody breaks into their house or something happens. And so,
Yeah.
again, these drug dealers, they don't know if they're being robbed by other drug dealers. We're coming in quick. It's dark. It's early in the morning. They're half awake. They've got guns. Maybe they're reaching for their gun. And again, you want to talk about a dangerous situation. It doesn't get really more dangerous than that. And the things that we are doing is what most SWAT teams would be doing. And that's the ironic thing, is that when I was on this task force, we were literally doing SWAT operations ourselves. And that's the special weapons and tactics teams, the ones, people see on TV with the helmets and the special gear and the shields and all that. And in fact, my own agency, if they were to do operations like that, they would have used the SWAT team. So we were like our own SWAT team. And literally, I was doing this it was only 2 years. I planned on doing it longer. This could be a whole nother episode, but it turned out that my boss, he worked for the Department of Justice for the state of California. He was a commander. And it turned out that he was actually stealing our evidence, selling it on the side. He was running illegal brothels. He was transporting stolen guns across state lines. I mean, it's so crazy that there's a 48 Hours TV special on it. I think there's a 2020. There's books written on it. And we had no idea. And thank God they did a wiretap on us, because they didn't know who was involved. And there was other people involved, but nobody on my task force was involved other than our boss. But it basically brought an end to my undercover career. It literally shut down that entire task force. And I planned on doing that job as long as I could. Most guys, when they go into that assignment, it's a 5 or 6 year lock. And in my agency, there's only one person that gets to do it at a time. And usually when that person does it, like I said, you're there 5 or 6 years. And so I just gotten to the point where, man, I was like on cruise control. It's like I had informants. I was running great cases. We were working cartel cases. I mean, it was just like we were going down to the U.S.-Mexico border. We were going to other cities, other counties. We were up in planes, helicopters, wiretap investigations, working with feds. I mean, it was a dream come true, man. I got to tell you, it was just
you went through it all. Yeah. Jeez.
And the funny thing was,
you weren't just patrolling the streets on foot, Mike. I mean, you were.
No. And the funny thing was, at the time I was married, my wife was pregnant, and I looked like a shitbag, man. And so like when I was off duty, like people no shit would like follow me in stores. I would get pulled over. Like I remember we went wine tasting one time in Napa, and like they wouldn't even serve me. Like they ignored me. Like, I'm sitting there in my LRG, t-shirt, my Air Jordans, baggy jeans, my big old diamonds, like long goatee, just shaved head. And, I'm just getting treated like shit, man. I tell you what, it was like that part was eye-opening too, because, people had no idea. And it was still kind of funny too, because like when my wife at the time gave birth to our daughter, I remember at the hospital, like the nurses and the doctors, they were just like looking at me, and like you could tell, and they wanted to like talk to my wife to make sure she was okay. And man, it was wild, bro. It was just like, knowing you're a cop, but like you're just living this whole other like life. It was just like, oh man, it was cool, man. I gotta tell you, it was something else.
I hate to admit it though, but I mean, people do though judge though by looks. I mean, they really do.
Yeah.
I mean, and if they only knew, so you would never like be in one of those situations and be like, listen, I'm a cop, I'm undercover, or no, you can't, right? You have to.
Well, no, that happened a couple times where I got pulled over. And the thing was like, I drove regular cars. They weren't police cars. I mean, there's nothing about it that said cop car. And so, yeah, in that case, obviously if it's a police officer pulling me over, but it depends too. We also had other forms of ID, and we had other driver's licenses and things like this. But yeah, if you're, getting pulled over by a cop and you're by yourself, and when it's safe to do so, yeah, you got to let them know who you are. Cause I'm not trying to get shot. I don't need this cop to see like a gun sticking out of my waistband when I look like a shitbag and I'm reaching for my wallet and I get capped. Like I'm not trying to have that happen. So yeah, I'm trying to go home at night, if you know what I mean. So you got to do what you got to do.
No, absolutely too. And the other scary thing, I mean, just like breaking in, I mean, coming in the middle of the night in those houses too, you don't know what drugs they're on, tweakers, and when people are
Yeah.
tweaking, who knows what they're capable of doing. So, I mean, do you think you feeling invincible helped you more?
Absolutely.
Or
Absolutely.
yeah, I would think that though too, because if you're hesitant or whatever, that could you know what I mean? Any hesitancy could, be a downfall real quick though. So by you just having that invincible type feeling, that definitely helped you in that position more
You know,
so than
it's
for
it's no different than like military special operations, but you're trained in a way that you are invincible, that you are in charge, that I mean, think about this. Like, if I pulled people over the time, I stopped people all the time, I'm going to houses, I'm going to bar brawls, all these things. I'm not a huge guy. I'm super fit. I'm healthy, I'm in good shape, like I can hold my own. But man,
yeah.
when I'm stopping a car full of dudes that are all bigger than me, that could all kick my ass, literally, right? But they got to know I'm in charge. And so, like, the way I talk to them, I got to believe that shit, right? And I do. And so it's like, you're in charge and you got to take charge. And if you're not that way, this profession is not for you, because you cannot have people walk all over you. You want people to comply. You want people to listen to you, because you know what? You don't want to use force. You don't want to get in a shooting. The
Uh,
last thing any police officer wants to do is they don't want to get hurt, and they don't want to hurt anybody else. We want to go home to our loved ones and to our family. And part of that is, like I said, when you strap the vest on and the belt and the gun and you hit that street, you're in charge. And again, you never know what you're going to. And I want people who are non-cops to think about this. But there's self-initiated proactive work, which is where, you know what, I'm going to stop this car, I'm going to stop this person, I'm looking for drugs, I'm looking for guns, whatever. But when someone calls 911, it goes to our dispatch. They send who they send. And a lot of times it's based on where you're at, who's the closest units, if that's your beat, if that's your sector, and you're going. And you don't have the option to say, hey, you know what? That sounds too dangerous. I'm going to let somebody else take that call. Like, I'm not feeling that today. I'm kind of having a bad day. I got a headache. My legs hurting. Like, I'm not down for that, right? No, you have no choice. There's an active shooter situation at a school. You hear like there's a guy with a gun literally killing kids right now, and you can hear the gunshots. No, you got to run towards those gunshots.
it's
You're not
crazy.
staging down the hallway. You're not waiting. You are taking out that threat, and it may cost your life. And that's the thing, is we know this. And I hate it when people, oh, that's what they signed up for. When an officer dies or something, oh, they signed up for that. You know what? I didn't sign up to get killed. I signed up to make a difference and to protect and save lives, knowing I may give my life in order to do that. And that's a whole nother thing. And I don't know too many people out there in this world who are willing to lay down their life for complete strangers. I'm not talking about a loved one, your buddy, somebody somebody you serve with. I'm talking about laying down your life for a complete stranger. Who's going to do that?
I think if you can't admire that, then there's something no wrong with you. I mean, a complete stranger who you don't know and you're willing to sacrifice though your life for them. I mean, that's I was a young punk back in the day, and I'd be like, oh, F the cops, F this or that, though. But as like you said earlier, we get older, we get intelligent, and even just the stadies like who pull over a car, like you don't know who's in that car ever. You don't know what's going on. Like it could be dicey, and like you don't have your back up there or anything right then and there. You got to approach her. I mean, it's a tough job, man. I mean, you got to have a certain type of intuition though to be able to do that. I mean, like, I don't think it's not, I don't think anybody could be a cop. Like,
No,
yeah, maybe anybody might be able to pass the test and anybody might be able to get in physical shape, but I'm talking about like the mental capacity though
no.
for it though. I think it takes though someone though special that, has balls of steel, A, and B, compassion too, because like you said, I mean, you'll murder, you'll kill for your family in a second. Like, come on, let's be honest. But I mean, to be able to to do that for complete strangers and to have their back and like this and that who you don't know. I mean, I find that very admirable. Like, I mean, that's takes a special type of it takes a special breed to be able to do that. And I mean, the first one, even like the first one, like, were you ever like the first one in the door when a door was kicked in?
All the time. Yeah. I
That's
mean,
that's
all the
insane. Like,
time.
that's think about it. A lot of people could just say and talk, but really think of that. The
I mean,
first one in, you don't know
I can
what's
tell,
in there. You don't
I
know
can tell
what's
you right
waiting for
now,
you.
we had a cartel case and we went through the front door, but there was a bedroom and the bedroom door was locked. And I was first in the bedroom. And this dude was in the bed with somebody else. And there was guns right in arm's reach on his nightstand, laying against the bed. And he started going for the gun. And thank God he stopped after I said a few things. But yeah, I mean, but think about that and think about the officers going to just domestic violence calls or just a family disturbance or a shoplifter at a store. I mean, a bar brawl, like you are the first one in. You don't know what's in there. You don't know what's around the corner. You don't know if there's other dangers of, who's the real threat. You may think you know who the threat is, but you don't know. And like in DV situations, there may be a victim who then becomes a suspect because you're trying to arrest the real suspect and that victim changes their mind and now they want to attack you because you're going after their partner or whatever the case may be. And let's be real. And again, we could talk on so many subjects, but times have changed. And this is a time, especially after George Floyd, where a lot of people hate cops. They don't like cops. And we're at risk and in danger, not just on the job, but we're at risk and in danger 24/7. And so are our families. And I can't tell you how many stories I heard after George Floyd of like spouses of law enforcement who had like a thin blue line license plate or a sticker on their car and how they got ran off the highway or ran off the road or got followed home or flipped off or, whatever, because they have this on their car. And that's what people don't think about. And, I served in the military and civilian law enforcement. And I want to lay out a quick parallel here for the people watching and listening to this. So let's just take a combat veteran. So first of all, the vast majority of military members don't go to combat, but the ones that do, they go to a very dangerous area where there is a known threat and they're there for a defined period of time. And eventually they leave that area and they go back to their base or they go back stateside or they go back to their family, right? And they may do that once. They may do it twice. I mean, if you're really badass, maybe do that 3, 4, 5 times in a career, right? Well, in law enforcement, especially now in California, the retirement age is 57. So you start at 21, you retire at 57. We're literally in combat every single day. Okay. We're not in combat for 6 months and then we're not, or for a year and then we're not. No, we're literally in combat every single day on the job because every single contact, every single person is a potential lethal threat. And that's why, like, for me, I was always huge on officer safety, on giving commands, on seeing people's hands, on making sure they're not moving. If they're sitting down, I tell them to sit down. All these things is to control the situation so I can prevent myself from getting hurt or killed, and I can prevent other people from getting hurt or killed. But again, I want people to truly think about that and think about especially our law enforcement members because they are at risk every single day. And you talk about a 30-year career of being in combat every single day and what that does to you, to your relationships, to your mental health, your physical health. I mean, it takes an absolute toll. I'm retired, but I'll tell you what, I am still always scanning. I'm always looking. If I sit in a restaurant or I'm eating somewhere, I'm always looking at the door. My back is to a wall or to the corner. There is nobody behind me. I'm always aware of who's coming, who's going. My fiance gets, she's like, why are you always looking around? It's like, well, I'm scanning every single person that walks by. I'm looking at their hands. I'm looking at their waistband. I'm not checking this person out like to check them out. I'm checking them out to make sure they're not a threat. And it's so ingrained that
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, you don't even think about it. You just do it. And you're on such a heightened alert that never goes away. And there truly is no like safe zone or comfortable area other than maybe your house. Other than your house, other than that, there really is no safe zone.
From you being involved with that for so long, it's just naturally ingrained. Like if you said to yourself, all right, I'm going to relax tonight at this restaurant, you just can't do that.
No, I can't. And I mean, even when I'm driving, I'm always aware of who's behind me. Like if there's a car that's been behind me too long, I'll turn off or I'll go a different way. Because I've always been, especially when I was undercover, I was paranoid of people following me, following me to my house. And so that never, I mean, maybe it goes away for some people. I'm just speaking on myself, but I retired in 2018. Here we are 7 years later, and it hasn't changed. It just absolutely hasn't changed. I mean, and it's to the point where it could be awkward. Like if my fiance go out, we meet another couple for dinner, and they're already sitting down, I will actually have to ask them to move. I say, hey, I know this may sound weird. I hope you don't mind, but I can't sit with my back facing the door. Like, is there any way we can switch seats? And it becomes awkward at times, but like, otherwise I'm going to be so tense that entire time that I won't be able to relax at all. I mean, literally I'll be on edge the entire time.
Yeah. I mean, geez, that's smart too in a way though, but I mean, you still got to enjoy life to a degree, you know what I mean? But it's just tough though when it's that ingrained in you. You just can't help it. It's just natural. Like it's not like you're walking in somewhere saying, okay, I have to sit there, but it's just
Yeah,
natural. Like it's from
exactly.
everything you've been through and seen. So all right. So yeah, man. I mean, I could only like imagine, but I can't, obviously put myself in your shoes because I haven't been in that situation. But I can understand though where you're coming from, how you have to be on high alert at all times, and in the world that we live in though today. And that's great though that it sounds like you have a fiance though who at least like understands that, like she like that she understands that that's the reason, and that you're not just so jumpity because you're paranoid. It's just something that's ingrained from you from your job.
Well, it helps that she's in the business, so she gets it
Oh,
herself.
well then, okay. I didn't know that. All right. That helps
Yeah.
tremendously,
Yeah.
tremendously. So,
Yes, it does.
nah, good for you though, man. Good for you. So yeah, so if you don't mind, do you want to take me to the day where things got a little crazy for you? Are you all right talking about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I won't go into like crazy detail about it because it's in my book, and I want people to obviously listen to that and read it. But
And let me tell everyone real quick right now, Relentless Courage. I'm telling you all right now, and I don't say this just because he's on the show. It's fantastic. If you get the book and want to read it, that's great. But if you get the audio, you could get the audio right there, Relentless Courage. Plus, I'll have it thrown right across the screen as well. When you get this, I got the audio, and where Mike actually, it's not some robotic there, like you could feel the emotion. It's Mike actually though talking with another lady, and it's intense, and I would definitely go for the audio version. And these days, I don't know, I travel. Like tomorrow, I got to go do a podcast out in Jersey and stuff like that. So I love the audiobooks anyway. But I like
yes,
the audiobooks though, where like where when it's about the person, like the person is actually talking, like you're the narrator, and like so. Yeah, so everyone out there, Relentless Courage. The link is in the description, and you can also get it on Audible, and you can get it on Amazon as well. I went with Audible because I think that's where you're going to get the best experience. But it is in the description. Click that link. And yeah, Mike, if you don't, this is how I found you from hearing about this story. As much as you could share of it and you want to share of it by all means, but let him have it.
yeah. Basically, like I mentioned earlier, so I was on my second solo shift as a sergeant. So I'm a brand new boss. The shift was a graveyard shift, we called it. So back then we worked from 9:30 at night till 7:30 in the morning. And because our shift started the day after Christmas, it started December 26th and it was going to end on December 27th. We had minimum staffing because people are off for the holidays, people are taking vacation. And so when I started this shift, there was another team on, there was another supervisor. But a little bit after like 1 a.m., the lieutenant went home, the other team went home, our dispatch went down to just one dispatcher, and I only had 4 officers, and I was literally the only supervisor on for the entire city. And it was our Friday, so I was excited. We were all making plans for the weekend. We were going to be off for several days. The shift was quiet. I mean, like literally nothing was going on. And usually that's pretty common, like around the holidays, nothing's going on. It's pretty quiet. It's uneventful. And I'm just a few hours from going off duty. I'm sitting in my car just by myself, reviewing police reports so that we can all get off on time and go home for the weekend. And suddenly, a little after 3 a.m., our dispatcher, female dispatcher, gets on the radio. And right away, I could tell something was off because her voice was unusual. It was very elevated. I'd never heard her sound like this. And she puts out a call that there's a woman inside a condominium and a man armed with a knife. And this address, I knew the general area. I just started driving towards there as fast as I could with my lights and siren. I could hear all the other officers answering up. But it's in an area where it's basically like one way in, one way out. It's all high residential. So it's like condominiums and apartment buildings. And I knew the general complex, but I didn't know where this exact unit was. About halfway there, and again, we're not talking very long because there's no cars on the street. I'm blowing through lights. I'm driving as fast as I can. The dispatcher again gets on the radio, and she says now that the boyfriend and girlfriend are barricaded inside their bedroom. And I was confused, so I actually asked for clarification on the radio as I'm driving. And I said, is the boyfriend the one with the knife, or is there another subject with a knife inside the condominium? And the dispatcher quickly clarified and said, no, there's a third subject armed with a knife. And so already, I'm trying to drive. I'm the supervisor. Like all these thoughts are going through my head, like tactically, like, what do we need to do? What's the game plan here? And already this call is unusual. I mean, it's not too often that you get a call where a guy with a knife is breaking into somebody's house and a couple barricaded inside their bedroom. I mean, literally, it's like something you think out of a movie or something like that. It doesn't happen every day. And so I get on scene in front of this large complex. It's very dark. Again, the way it's laid out is there's multiple rows of 2-story attached condominiums. And I'm out front, the main complex. And as I start to get out of my patrol car, a couple things happen. One of my officers is actually pulling up right behind me, thank God. But as I'm getting out, the dispatcher starts screaming on the radio, saying, units, there's a struggle. And then the phone line goes dead. She loses all contact with the female caller inside that condominium. It goes dead. There's no contact. And at this point, I can hear blood-curdling screams coming from the distance. Literally, a woman screaming for her life. I mean, to this day, one of the worst sounds I've ever heard. My partner and I look at each other, we pull out our handguns, and we just start running towards the screams as fast as we can. I know I've got more officers coming, but it's just her and I. Eventually, we have to crawl underneath this outside stairwell, and we get into this open courtyard. There's 2-story attached condominiums all around us. We're literally right in the middle of it. We get to where the screaming's coming from, and it goes dead silent. So from this blood-curdling screams, just eerie silence. There's nobody outside. I don't hear anything at all. I mean, I can literally hear, I remember like crickets sounding. And at this point, we find the unit, and we announce ourselves multiple times. I go towards the front door. She posts up at a very large window to the left of the front door. And we're yelling, guns are out. Police, come out, show us your hands. And there's no movement, no sound. What we can see, it's very dark inside. I don't see any lights on inside the condominium. I try kicking open the front door. It doesn't work. My partner motions to that very large window to the left of the front door, and it's completely shattered into the condominium. This was a louvered window the size of a door, and it was shattered into the condominium. So at this point, my partner and I are on each side of this broken window, guns out. Again, we're yelling, police, come out, show us your hands. Nothing, no sound, no movement. Without saying anything, she looks at me, I look at her, she goes in, I'm right behind her, guns are out, we're going through this kitchen, glass everywhere. We exit the kitchen, she goes right, I go left. I end up clearing this like family room, dining room area. There's nobody in there, nothing unusual, no signs of a struggle. I join my partner. She's now standing at the base of the stairwell that leads to the upstairs of this condo. Behind us is that locked front door that I tried kicking open. So if you can imagine, we're shoulder to shoulder. She's to my right, my shoulder's touching her shoulder, and to her right is a solid wall. And so when you look up the staircase, it's dark, there's no lights. but we can see on the upper left, there's some kind of opening. So it's either a hallway, a landing, a bedroom. I don't know. I've never been in this condo, but we know it goes somewhere. So her and I, again, guns out. We have lights mounted to our handguns. They're on, they're illuminated. We're both pointing up the stairwell. This seems like eternity, but I'm talking like seconds here. Initially, there's nothing. And then moments later, a male subject partially comes out, but we can't see the entire right side of his body. He's only halfway out, just sweating profusely, eyes wide open, just staring straight through us if we're not there. And we're yelling, "Show us your hands, show us your hands." No reaction. I mean, I don't remember eyes blinking. I don't remember facial expressions. He didn't say anything, no body movement. He's not reacting. And I'm not used to that. Usually when we point our guns at people, they react, whether, they stop, they freeze, they put their hands up, they run away, they say F you. I mean, usually there's a reaction, and there's no reaction. Like, literally, this guy looked like a zombie. At some point, 2 other officers came inside the complex, the condo, and I yelled for one of them to get the taser, less than lethal. So there's another male officer, another female officer. The male officer gets the taser. He's like, "I've got the taser." He positions right behind myself and that other first female officer, and that last female officer goes perpendicular to the stairwell with her gun out. And so now we're there, and then moments later, the guy fully comes out, and we can now see his right side. My partner yells, "He's got a knife! He's got a knife!" And in his right hand, he was clenching a full-size kitchen knife. So if you've ever seen the Halloween movies, the Michael Myers movies, it was that size of a knife. And he was clenching that in his right hand. And so now we're yelling, "Drop the knife, drop the knife." And all we know is he's between us and that couple. We don't know if they're dead, if they're dying, if they're bleeding out. And again, initially he's not reacting, but suddenly he takes the knife up over his head in a stabbing position, and he starts coming down the stairwell towards us. I shoot, other officers shoot. I didn't know if I hit him. He's now at the base of the stairwell. 2 of the officers relocated to that family room, living room area. The male officer with the taser dropped that, now has his gun out, and we're both literally just a few feet from this guy, and he's still clenching this huge Michael Myers knife in his right hand. And again, he's between us and that couple, and so now we're literally, guns are on him, but we're like, "Drop the knife, drop the knife." And he starts coming back up with a knife. I shoot, my partner shoots. It was devastating. I mean, his eye was gone, blood everywhere. I mean, literally just right in front of me. We already had medical staging. I radioed in, "Shots fired, shots fired." We sent in medical. I had my partner check vitals. There were, I mean, it was obvious this guy was dead. I mean, his entire eye was gone. Just blood everywhere. I had officers go up and check on the couple upstairs. And thank God we got there when we did, because this guy had been stabbing through the bedroom door, and the door was coming off the hinges. And this poor couple, was physically barricading their bodies against the door, trying to prevent him from coming in. And I know to this day, had we not gotten there when we did, that couple would be dead. I have absolutely no doubt that couple would be dead. But it was that incident. You know that feeling of invincibility we talked about earlier that I had the entire time? Up to this point, if you count my military and law enforcement career for 14 and a half years, it was gone in an instant, in a millisecond. And there was other times I almost shot people. There was hundreds of times I pulled out my gun. But for whatever reason, this incident at that time, it took away that feeling of invincibility in a millisecond. And it forever changed my life. And it led to a series of horrendous events, from a federal lawsuit to losing my marriage to trying to kill myself in the line of duty. I mean, to literally losing everything. Until after 4 years of suffering in silence, I finally got the strength and courage to ask for help. And what I want people to understand was that up to that point, I had been exposed to hundreds and hundreds of critical traumatic incidents, but I didn't talk about them. I didn't share them. I just kept it inside. I bottled it up and told myself, this stuff will never bother me. It will never affect me. I don't know these people. And I call it my tipping point, because it's like, if you can imagine a glass jar just filling up and filling up with all this trauma that I've been exposed to. And that shooting caused my jar to overflow to the point where literally my life started to spiral downward to the point of losing everything.
Even though you did what you had to do and it was right, it doesn't matter. It's still screwed you up big time.
Well, let me tell you something. Not only that, I went through a 4-year federal lawsuit, and I was a defendant in San Francisco in federal court on trial for 2 weeks for doing my job in the line of duty, and not only saving our own lives, but the lives of that couple who testified to that. And we were cleared on the shooting by external investigators, by the district attorney, by our internal investigators, and we saved lives. And this shooting happened the end of 2012. I was on federal trial in 2016. Think about that. A justified, lawful shooting in the line of duty, and still a $50 million federal lawsuit on trial in San Francisco federal court.
How though? I mean, like, he's coming at you though with the knife coming down. I mean, that's what you have to engage there.
Oh, absolutely. There's no other option.
I mean,
But
what
this
else you
happens
gotta
all the time. We have officers getting prosecuted and charges filed against them for doing their job. And we've come to a situation now where nobody wants to be a cop anymore.
Mm.
And think about that. I mean, if you're not going to be protected when you do the right thing, and they're going to throw you under the bus, and it didn't happen in my case. My agency defended me. We went to court. We won and we prevailed. But I'm saying there's officers out there right now where their agencies, their local governments, their state governments are turning their back on them and throwing them under the bus for completely justified shootings.
Yeah, that's scary. I mean, that's why then I guess a lot of people don't want to become cops though, because then if they do though the right thing, I mean, they could get prosecuted though for doing the right thing. That's what it kind of sounds like in a way, you know? I mean, that's scary. And one other thing that stuck out to me, and you don't have to mention it on here if you don't want to, though, but do you want to bring up though, like when you thought that things were somewhat like smoothing out and then you had to go to court and what happened?
Well, I think what you're getting to, and I think it's good to know.
When I heard this, I was just like,
well, yeah. So in our county, we have what's called a coroner's inquest. So anytime that law enforcement is involved or present when somebody dies or gets killed, as an example, like in a jail setting, if somebody were to hang themselves in front of you, or if you're in a vehicle pursuit, a vehicle chase, and somebody crashes and kills somebody, or like in this case, a police shooting, there is it's not a trial, but it's a public hearing. It's called a coroner's inquest, where there's a judge, there's a jury. It's open to the public. In my case, there was reporters there. My wife at the time was there. My people from my department, the family members of the man who tried to kill me was there. And it turns out that he had an identical twin brother that was there, and who was later there during my federal trial. And this was a face that I could not get out of my nightmares and my dreams. Literally, and I'm talking identical twin, literally sitting feet from me in the courtroom. And so if you can imagine, after almost losing your life to somebody and having post-traumatic stress injury and depression, anxiety, nonstop nightmares, not being able to sleep, trying to drink yourself to sleep, having these just heinous nightmares, and now literally the real thing is just feet from you in the courtroom. I mean, you can't even make this up. It's like what are the odds of this happening? I mean, like, this sounds like a movie. Like, this couldn't be real, right? But it is real, and I lived it, and it's just unimaginable. And this guy was in the Air Force, you know? And that's the thing, is I was in the Air Force. And what people don't understand is, and you know, this affected me in so many ways, because I didn't want to take that guy's life. I had no other option. It was literally my life or his life at that point. I had no other option. And to this day, it bothers me. It affects me tremendously. I think about him. I think about his brother. I think about his parents. I think about his family, what they had to endure, what they went through. And as a father myself, I couldn't imagine. And my heart goes out to them. And I pray and hope someday that they listen to one of my interviews, that they read my book, that they give me the chance to sit in a room with them and just talk to them and let them know how much this affected me, because I had no choice. And if I could have done something magical to change this or prevent it, I would have, but I had no other option. And I want people to know that when this shit happens, we don't just go on with our life like nothing happened. You know, every situation's different, but and people don't realize that less than 1% of all police officers are ever involved in a fatal shooting. Less than 1%. Now, you watch the TV and news and media, you think, no, officers are involved in shootings all the time. In fact, in my agency, there hadn't been another shooting the entire time I was there. I think the last shooting was 14 years before mine. And since I left there, there's only been one other shooting. But this will affect me the rest of my life. Every time Christmas rolls around, every time I go to Costco or Target and I see the damn Christmas decorations going up in October, I start thinking about this shooting. And it gets worse and worse as my anniversary comes. And I feel so guilty because my daughter and my family and everyone's excited about Christmas. I freaking hate Christmas because this is what I think about.
You know, it's very telling though what you just said though about, like, you know, people just think that, you know, when something goes down like that, oh, okay, shift's over, go home to the family, have dinner like nothing happened. But you're a prime example of, I mean, you know, the mental health aspect of what it really though does though to your mind. And to this day, you still say like the holidays still bother you. I mean, you're still, what do you do? Like, you know, because there's people out there hurting and, you know, that have been through a lot of stuff. And I mean, that was very intense. And the identical twin brother too. And just, I mean, it's not taking another human life. I can't relate because I have never done it. But my point is, you did though do though the right thing, but that doesn't help at all. Like in your mind at all. Like even knowing that you did the right thing.
In my case, we don't know why this guy did what he did. And that's part of the problem. So, you know, there was THC in his system because they test for all kinds of drugs. But back then, there was bath salts. There was all these undetected synthetic marijuana, like all these things that were undetectable. And so we don't know if that was the cause. We don't know if it was drug-induced psychosis from marijuana. But this young man, and I'm going to call him a young man because he had no police contacts. He had no criminal history. He was well loved and respected. He had no history of mental illness. In fact, you know, I didn't give the whole backstory here, but it turns out that this guy, the suspect, was one of the roommates in that condo. And I go into more detail in the book, but this was actually one of his best friends and his girlfriend that was over visiting. And they were actually hanging out earlier that night, having a good time after the holiday. The other roommate wasn't home. He was still with family. So it was just the two roommates and the victim roommate's girlfriend. And they were watching movies, hanging out. The boyfriend and girlfriend go up to their room. The boyfriend's playing Xbox hours into the night. And again, no issues, no problems ever. And they later testify and describe, and again, I didn't know this at the time or at the scene, I later found this out, was that about 3 a.m, he comes in the room, doesn't say a word. They describe the same look, sweating profusely, eyes wide open, without saying anything, jumps on the bed, starts trying to strangle to death the male roommate. And they're calling his name. They're talking to him. He's not reacting. By the grace of God, somehow, because these guys are both wrestlers. They wrestled in high school together. The girlfriend and boyfriend got him off. They got him downstairs, booted him outside the condo, locked the front door, went up to their bedroom, locked it, called 911. And that's when he broke through that huge window right there in the kitchen, opened the drawer, grabbed that huge knife, and went straight up to their room and started stabbing through their bedroom door. And so to this day, I don't know why he did what he did. Now, I'll be honest with you. If this guy was some cold-blooded serial killer, some rapist, some gangbanger, I don't think it would bother me as much. That's a fact. I think it would still affect me, but it wouldn't affect me to this level. And that's why I say everyone's different. Every situation's different. In fact, in my shooting, everyone was affected differently. Some people may have not been affected, and everyone had different actions. You know, two of the people, they fired their handguns, but they didn't hit him one time. I was the only one that shot him both times during both volleys of shots. And that's what I have to live with, you know. But there's other things too, like sometimes people, when they don't act, like when I'm talking about police officers, they have guilt or there's survivor's guilt. I mean, there's all kinds of things that happen during the situations, and we all had different vantage points. We saw different things. We heard different things. And when you're in it, you're so hyper focused in that, you know, that basically it kicks in where you're so hyper focused on the threat. I remember that tip of that knife, you know, I don't know what all these people around me are doing. I had no clue until we talked about it a couple weeks later when we were able to, after we went through our interviews investigation, because all I'm focused on is that huge knife coming right at me. That's all I know at that point. And so again, I think had it been a different situation, yeah, I think it probably would have affected me differently. But I also think that if I would have started out my law enforcement career the right way, and I would have talked about all these horrible incidents that I've been to, I mean, tons of suicides, fatal car accidents, seeing people get run over in crosswalks, domestic violence, sexual assault. I mean, even just tons and tons of natural deaths. I've been to them. I've seen them. That stuff takes a toll. Well, I didn't process that. I didn't talk about it with my spouse. I didn't talk about it with my coworkers. I didn't believe in peer support. I didn't believe in therapy or counseling. I didn't believe in any of that shit because I was like, you know what? That's for weak people. That's weakness. And it could have been further from the truth. It takes strength and courage to talk about this stuff. And my problem is I waited too long. If I would have talked about things as they happened, I guarantee you I'd still be working today. I guarantee you I'd still be in law enforcement. And that's part of my message to people when I go out and talk across the country is that this stuff is not a career ender. But if you wait too long, it can be. It can be a life ender, a relationship ender, a career ender. But you know what? It's never too late to ask for help. And the sooner you get help, the sooner you're going to get better.
Amen to that. And even besides the police or whatever you're doing out there in life, I came from a town where where everyone thought the true tough guy was the guy who you know who could fight the best in the bars. And I always use this line. I say the true tough guy is the one that can open up about his emotions because that's not easy. And I think in your situation, I'm not a psychiatrist or nothing, but by bottling up everything and just never talking that out, you're just setting yourself up for disaster.
Absolutely. Because the thing is, you know, we have a very unique profession. I mean, there's other ones like it, firefighters, paramedics, dispatchers, military members. But you think about the average person, everyone's got trauma in their life, but most people, and again, I'm not saying all, I'm saying most people, they may have really one or two like truly traumatic incidents in their life. And some people are fortunate, they don't have any. I mean, God bless them. But for us, in an average career, I mean, you're talking well over 500. I mean, it could be upwards of 1,000 in a single day. You could literally have 2 or 3 critical incidents, traumatic incidents, right? So think about that. And that is not normal. It's abnormal. And so, you know, we make it abnormal to not talk about it. But in reality, if we talk about it, that is normal because we're expressing, you know, what we had to see, the effect on us, what we dealt with. We get it off our chest and we can move on. But if we don't do that, again, it's going to bottle up, and bottle up, and potentially it's going to explode. And unfortunately, this can also result in bad uses of force, in police officers having bad shootings or using excessive force or domestic violence at home or alcohol. I mean, it eventually is going to come out somehow. And so what I'm stressing, what I'm advocating for is you've got to deal with this the healthy way. And you got to do this by talking about it, by getting it off your chest.
And the police though, force, like, they don't have anything like set up though, like to where they should, like, that you would think after so many situations though that they would have a therapist on hand though to where who you could talk to like weekly, or like they should make that like mandatory, don't you think, in a way?
No, absolutely. In fact, even back in 2012, in California, the Bay Area, my department was very advanced, very progressive. We had peer support team. We had a contracted therapist who specialized in first responders. We did like an annual training, but honestly, a lot of the stuff back then was check the box, like to say that we had it, but nobody was using it, and I didn't believe in it, and I wasn't going to use it. In fact, back then, like the people who were on peer support, they were like the nice, like likable people. Like these weren't like the cops who had like been in shootings and been in like crazy stuff, like people I looked up to and people I'm going to go talk to. So yeah, I didn't believe we had it, but I didn't believe in it. Now things have changed. Things have gotten a lot better, but I will tell you, there's so much more work to do because suicide is still the number one killer for law enforcement officers. The fact is that you are actually much more likely to die by your own hands than to die by the hands of another. So to be attacked or shot, be in a car crash, any of that stuff, you are much more likely to kill yourself. And the crazy thing is, we spend thousands of hours in our career training on firearms, on tactics, on emergency driving, arrest and control tech, like all these things to protect us physically against the bad guy and bad girl, right? But we spend little to no time on our number one threat, which is ourselves. That is the most ironic thing. And you hear about, military suicide and 22 a day and all that. But the fact is, first responders are killing themselves at record numbers. And it's happened to firefighters, police officers, paramedics, dispatchers. A lot of it's covered up. A lot of times you don't hear about it, but it's happening. And it's an epidemic. And I almost became one of those numbers. And that's why I've devoted my life now. I'm retired, but I've devoted my life to this mission to try and help and save as many military members and first responders as I possibly can by sharing my story. In my book, I go into much greater of my story. We didn't even hit the tip of the iceberg here. I go all the way back to childhood until present day.
Yeah.
But the fact is, I'm not unique and I'm not special. I'm going to tell you that right now. For all those first responders, military members out there, they're saying me too when they're watching this and listening, because they've been through this stuff. They've had the same feelings. But again, they're not asking for help. They're not talking about it. They're losing their marriages. They're committing suicide. My thing is that I truly look back now and I go, you know what? And again, I want people to realize too, like with post-traumatic stress injury, and again, I'm speaking on my case, but it's a gradual process. It wasn't like the shooting happened, the next morning I'm just this hot mess and my life is all effed up. No, it's a very gradual process. And at that point, when we had this meeting 2 weeks later, before we went back to work, and everybody just wanted to get back to work as quickly as possible, there were some things that I knew were off. And it wasn't like major, but I knew like something's not right here, right? And I think if I would have opened up and started talking about that myself as the senior ranking member in that room, I think other people might have done the same. And I tell people this when I train and I talk across the country, that if you want somebody to be vulnerable and open and honest with you, you have to be willing to do the same first. And especially if you're a position of authority. And so what we need leaders at all levels, whether it's police chiefs, captains, lieutenants, sergeants, field training officers, even just senior officers who have been on the job for a minute. We need them to set the example with their subordinates or people that are junior to them and be open and honest and vulnerable, because they've all dealt with shit. They've all had this job affect their marriages, their relationship with their children, their mental health, their physical health. And a lot of people have sought out help, but they just never admit it or talk about it. And we need to change the culture to make this normal, to make it not a big deal, to make it more routine. And that's where we're going to fix this issue. And I don't think that takes away from that feeling of invincibility at all. I think actually I would be a better police officer today had I asked for help back then. But my thing is, and we're not going to have time to get into it here, but in my book, I talk heavily about administrative betrayal and institutional betrayal. And we could do a whole nother episode on this, but this is where when I was
We're
off
definitely
trying to
we're definitely doing another part.
well, yeah, we're gonna have to because we can talk for a long time. But like
Yeah.
one of the major themes of my book, and that's resonating with most people, and I didn't expect this. This was a surprise because nobody talks about this. I thought it was gonna be the trauma, the suicide, all that. No, it turns out it's when our blue family abandons us and turns their back on us. Now the public thinks, oh, there's this thin blue line, and you guys take care of each other and blah blah blah. And I'm not saying that's not the case. And there's some things that go on maybe in certain places. But what I'm going to tell you is the truth is that we eat our own better than anybody. And we think it's family, but at some point we learn it's not family. It's not family at all. And we learn that we're just a number filling a position. And I learned that when I was trying to get better, and my plan was to come back to work. It was my goal all along because as a child, it's all I ever wanted. It's all I ever knew. And I was damn good at it. But when I realized that what I thought was my blue family didn't give a shit about me and wanted to throw me to the wolves, that changed everything for me. And that was that abandonment, that betrayal. And that brings up, again, we haven't talked about it, but childhood trauma. And let me tell you something right now, too. Not all, but most, and I'll just say maybe many first responders have some form of childhood trauma. In my case, I had a father who was an alcoholic and a drug addict. Not my stepfather who was the cop, my biological father. But I had a great upbringing. I mean, I had a great mother, a great stepfather, good schools, sports, like everything was good. I didn't even realize the effect of my father's issues on me. But when my blue family abandoned me, it brought that unresolved shit right back to the surface, the stuff I never dealt with. And here's the crazy thing. That childhood trauma actually makes us very good at what we do as first responders. It makes us great firefighters, police officers, dispatchers, paramedics, military members, because at a young age, we overcome adversity, we become resilient, we become natural caretakers, right? And so we become these big badass cops, firefighters. We're not going to ever go back to childhood. We're not going to ever open that door and acknowledge when we were vulnerable, when we were weak, when we had no control. And that's the crazy thing about this, because it makes us damn good at what we do. And I'll even go a step further and say, when we do our psych part, you know, they're looking for a certain profile. They're looking for a certain type of person. And I think this is starting to change in the hiring process because they know there's certain things that actually make us very good at what we do.
Yeah, no. Just intense though, man. Intense. So what are you doing now? Like they like obviously, you know, you speak and you do, and I mean that's gotta be very therapeutic. And even just on my end, like, you know, with addiction, also too, that was all about asking for help, opening up. Like, you know, there's nothing wrong with asking for help. And I don't know if people are embarrassed to ask for help or if they want to play the tough guy role. A lot of it with the addiction aspect, I know a lot of it is embarrassment,
Yeah.
but like for in your situation, I don't know if it's like the machismo, the macho. No, I don't need to ask for help. I'm this or that. But I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's what's going to save you from that tipping point, man. Like it really is. It's very therapeutic to open up and talk. I see a psychiatrist to this day, and I'm not afraid to admit it. You know what I'm saying? I don't think there's nothing wrong with that at all. You
No,
know,
you're right. I mean, it starts in childhood. Let's be honest. I mean, boys and girls are treated differently. You're taught that as a boy, but the issue is, and it's not an issue because this is partly necessary, but when you talk about military training and especially law enforcement training, again, you have to be trained and conditioned with a certain mindset to where you are a badass, to where you are a warrior. I think the part comes in that once you've done that, and once you have a badass warrior, that's where then you need to bring in, these other ideas and concepts of making you more operational, making you more effective at what you do, making you more resilient. Again, it's not taking away from that being a warrior or being a badass, it's balancing it. But there's a time and a place for it, again, because when you look at like military boot camps and you look at police academies, they have to wash out the weak people, and you have to get rid of the people who can't endure stress, who want to give up, who aren't willing to fight to the end. And so when I see people washing out, and that's a good thing, because what you don't want is when you're a cop on the street and you're a fight for your life, you don't want your partner next to you quitting. You want your partner next to you fighting until the end. Right. And so there is a madness to the method, right? And there's timing and there's the right place. Again, so I'm not saying that, we need to change the culture in that way. We need to be badasses. We need to be quote unquote invincible, but we need to manage our mental health. We need to have better relationships with the people that we work with and serve with. And, I'll just give you an example. If we, when you're a brand new officer, you're set up with a training officer, seasoned veteran officer. I did that. I was a training officer, and you are sent to the worst of the worst calls because they want you to get experience when you've got someone next to you. This is how you learn. You learn in the academy, but you don't really learn until you're on the job. And this is the appropriate time where after those calls that are, traumatic or intense, you have to debrief it and you talk about tactics. You talk about like how you're going to document it, the evidence, arrest and control, like everything's critiqued, everything's talked about. Well, what needs to be talked about after all of that is at the end for that training officer just to acknowledge, say, look, you know what, going to that call today, seeing that poor kid that literally died right in front of us as paramedics were working on him, that was messed up. And that I've been a cop for 20 years and I'm probably not going to sleep too well tonight. Like all I'm thinking about right now is my kid. And, I want you to know that this is normal. Like if you're feeling that way, it's normal. And again, I'm not asking you to tell me how you feel. I'm just letting you know how I feel. And I'm going to tell you some things that I do to make myself feel better. Like maybe I'm going to go for a run when I get home, or I'm going to go hit the gym. And then after that, I'm going to come home and I'm going to talk to my wife or my girlfriend or my fiance. And I'm not going to tell her the gritty details. She doesn't need to hear that.
Yeah, Mike, I can't even imagine. I mean, I was never a police officer or anything, but after everything you were saying, I could only imagine. And how did Relentless Courage come about? How did the book come about?
It's a crazy story. Like I actually never planned on any of this. I never envisioned it. I medically retired back in 2018, like I said, and I could have just gone off and lived a quiet life, just retired. But again, I felt this calling. I felt this purpose of trying to help people, just like when I went into law enforcement. And it all started with a single podcast interview, actually, about a year after I retired. This dude that I didn't know, he reached out to me on LinkedIn, and he knew I was into fitness. He knew I was a former cop, and he kept asking me to be on a show. And I was like, yeah, I'm not really interested, bro. I appreciate it. But thank God this guy hounded me because it changed everything. So this guy drove up 2.5 hours, met me at this Mimi's Cafe. I thought we were going to have breakfast, thought we were going to hang out. But he's like, look, bro, I got an hour and I got to be out of here. And he already had a video camera. He had computers with headphones. And I sat down in this booth in the back of the restaurant. You can actually hear the faint Mimi's music in the background of our interview if you really listen for it. And he started asking me questions. And I had never shared any of my stuff publicly. Even most of the people I worked with, 99% of them, other than like maybe the administration, had no idea all the things I'd been through. They didn't know I retired out for post-traumatic stress, like none of it. And so for the first time, literally in my life, I just sat down. I started answering questions from my heart. Like I didn't think about, let me make this sound good or let me make this sound perfect. Because that was the old me. Like honestly, in the military and law enforcement, it's like, let me craft this perfect image and, pretend like my life is just perfect. And man, I was broken, honestly. And I just sat down, spoke from the heart, and we wrapped up. And I was so nervous because I thought, man, when this thing airs, I'm going to start getting like hateful messages. People are going to be looking down upon me, calling me weak and all this stuff. And the opposite happened. Like literally, I started getting messages from all over the world, from England, from Canada, Australia, New Zealand. And people started saying, like, man, your story is my story. Like the things you were saying, like I thought I was listening to myself. And they started sharing their stories with me. And so, man, that led to podcast after podcast after podcast, which eventually led to some public speaking. And then right before COVID, this is where the book comes in. So my co-author, Dr. Shauna Springer, amazing, amazing, remarkable woman. She's a Harvard graduate. She's a PhD. She's a clinical psychologist. She spent most of her career working for the Department of Veterans Affairs, working with hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of combat veterans, working with first responders. She truly gets it. And she had already written 3 books. I didn't know her, but again, LinkedIn is an awesome thing. She reaches out to me on LinkedIn and says, look, I love all the advocacy work you're doing. I just want to set up a call to let you know what I'm doing and kind of just see if, there's anything we can do together, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, yeah, let's do this. So I set up the phone call. She didn't know my story. In fact, it turns out she lived in the city I was a police officer, but never heard of me, never knew of me, never knew about the shooting, like never knew about any of this stuff. And she starts telling me about her work with stellate ganglion block, which is in the book. It's a medical procedure to treat the physical symptoms of post-traumatic stress. Actually, I had it done since meeting her. We'll talk about that on our next episode. But then I shared my story, part of which I shared here, but I shared all of it. And afterwards, she actually asked me, she's like, have you ever thought about writing a book? And I kind of laughed and I was like, honestly, I am so burnt out from the 20 plus years of just like report writing and law enforcement and post-traumatic stress. Like I don't have that same focus and concentration and drive that I once had. I just don't think I could do something like that. And so we left the phone call at that. 2 weeks later, she hits me back up. She's like, look, Michael, I've heard hundreds and hundreds of trauma stories, but your story, I can't stop thinking about it. Your story is going to help save countless lives. And I haven't even met her in person, bro. This is our second phone call. And she said, I want to do this book with you. I want to make this happen. And without even meeting her, I knew in my heart, I said, let's do this. And so for the first almost year of the project, because COVID happened, we were doing Zoom meetings every single week, 2 hours long, going back and forth. And eventually we came up with our book, Relentless Courage. Now, I'm going to tell you what makes this thing so unique, because there really is no other book like it in the world that I know of. So every chapter has 2 parts. The first part is my story told in my voice all the way back to childhood. The second half of every chapter, Doc Springer comes in as a clinical psychologist, as a culturally competent clinician for first responders. She breaks everything down, explains it, but in a very easy to understand. I mean, literally a 12-year-old could fully understand it and now see the true human behind the badge and the uniform. And together, we show a pathway to healing on how to overcome post-traumatic stress injury. There is one other chapter. It's the same format, but instead of me in the beginning, it's my best friend, John Davison, who was a Vietnam veteran and a 35-year reserve officer with my department. Now, he actually saved my life. I'm not going to give that story away on here, but that man saved my life. And so this book, it's been a bestseller for over 40 weeks. In Canada and the US, it's sold in 8 countries. It's in paperback, hardcover, Kindle, Audible. But we didn't do the Audible at first. And that's my biggest regret, because so many people, even like myself, I don't have the time or the focus to sit down and read a book. And so many combat veterans with traumatic brain injury, people with post-traumatic stress, they can't do it. But the Audible, we actually went into a world-renowned studio where like Destiny's Child recorded, I mean, famous artists. And I relived every single incident, and we recorded it in our own voices. And it's literally straight from our heart and soul. And so when you listen to this, it's like being in a movie. And I'm going to tell you right now, it will change your life. And it's saving relationships, it's saving careers, but most importantly, it's saving lives. And I'll tell you this much. If you're not sure, if you're thinking, yeah, like, I don't know, I'll tell you one thing. Go on Amazon, pull up the book, Relentless Courage, and right now, look at how many reviews there are. 669 reviews. And look at how many reviews are like 4 and 5 paragraphs long of people literally talking about how the book changed their life. And find any other book that has that ratio of written reviews, you're not going to find it. And again, this book, it's straight from our heart and soul, and it has one purpose, one mission: to help save as many lives as we can. And this book is not just for first responders. It's not just for military members. It's not just for their family members. This book is for every single person out there. And if you do read it or you listen to it, I personally want to hear your thoughts. I literally check all my social media every single day, and I guarantee I'll get back to you. So please send me a message.
Yeah, and I got the Audible version, and it's not robotic at all. It is very, very, very emotional, the whole nine, what Mike just explained. And the link to Relentless Courage, the book, is in the description as well. You let them know, Mike, where everyone could find you at.
Absolutely. I'm literally on every social media platform you can find. You just have to type in the Sergeant SGT first, and then type in Michael Sugrue. You can even just Google that, Google Sergeant Michael Sigru. I mean, hundreds of interviews will come up, but I am on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, TikTok, Truth, Parlor. I mean, LinkedIn. I'm on every single one. So again, reach out to me. I love to hear your thoughts. And one thing I forgot to mention in that is in the back of our book, we have an entire resource section that has vetted, confirmed resources that specialize with first responders. And many of these are free, great programs, some that I've been through. But again, this book will absolutely change your life as you know it.
And if you guys don't feel like they'll remember it all of that, though, to find Mike, literally every single link is in the description of this video. You just hit the description and go all the way down, and you will see every one of his links, where to find him, including where to get Relentless Courage as well. And Michael Sigru, I can't thank you enough, my friend. I mean, we got to do this again. I didn't even
Yes,
realize, we were at like an hour, and I was like, what? Like, I thought it was 15 minutes, man. I was so into it. This was fantastic. And I love the
absolutely.
message that you're spreading, man, because it really needs to be told. And, a lot of people need to open up though more. And, like me coming from the addiction background, if I never opened up, I wouldn't be here today. And who knows where you would be if you didn't open up. So there's no shame in opening up. There's no shame in asking for help. That's what I always try telling people, and I'm sure you tell them the same. But guys, you could find Mike in the description and everywhere where he told you. And me personally, I'm not trying to tell him what to get, Mike, but I just think that if you like reading, then get the book. But the Audible, I think the Audible, you just feel the emotions better. And you know what I mean? It's like it's a movie.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so Mike, I can't thank you enough, my friend, for the time and for really sharing this message. I'm so appreciative. Thank you so much. And I really hope, though, that this gets around to a lot of people, because a lot of people don't need to hear this. And I love how you said it. And I just want to end it with this. You don't have to be a police officer. You don't have to be, I was on the other side of the law most of my life. And from what I was listening to, it's absolutely fantastic. So it's for everyone. It's for everyone, because everyone has everyday problems and everyone has little trauma and mental health problems. It's for everyone, not just for people with the badge. And I'll be thanking you for an hour nonstop if I don't shut up. But thank you so much, my man. That this was truly an honor, and just thank you, my man.
Likewise, brother, and keep up the great work. And even our phone conversation before this interview, we have so much in common. And It just shows that no matter how dark or how bad things get, it's never too late, and we can all change our lives. We can all turn our lives around, and you're doing remarkable work, and you're saving lives, brother. So thank you for what you do, and we'll have to do it again. Absolutely.
I appreciate your kind words, Mike. And no, yeah, I would love to. My door is open for you anytime. You have my number, my friend. Michael Sigru, everyone. Check out the links in the description. Get at him. Get Relentless Courage. You won't be disappointed. Mike, thank you so much again, my friend.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care, buddy.